welcome to the Bougie Fujoshi channel. For those who know me, hello again, and for those who don't, I hope you stick around because today we are talking about Kii Kanna Sensei's Umibe no Étranger, aka Stranger by the Beach, aka Stranger by the Shore, aka Seaside Stranger. That was a lot. Anyone following this series knows that the journey from the manga to the film has been a long one, but we're finally here. Before we go off the deep end here, class, let's just get our feet wet with a little rundown of it, shall we? Our story begins with Shun, who is a novelist that is now living on a small island outside of Okinawa with his aunt after being disowned by his parents. Looking out to a bench by the sea, he begins to notice Mio, a student in his last year who at the time was dealing with the death of his own parents. Time skip 3 years later, Mio returns to the island to confess his feelings to Shun, and the story goes on from there. Kii Kanna Sensei's Umibe no Étranger ended its run in the magazine On Blue in 2014. Renta was the first one to license this manga in English back in 2016 with the title Stranger by the Beach. The one-shot was adapted into an anime film under the Blue Links label with a theatrical release in September of last year, bringing us to just this past July. Using the title Stranger by the Shore, Funimation started streaming the English sub and dub of the film, and 7 Seas Entertainment later published the English print version of the one-shot as Seaside Stranger. I honestly don't know how this has so many different titles, and I feel like there should have been some kind of meeting, but I digress. So if you do the math, class, this single one-shot has a grand total of 4 different English versions: a subbed film, a dubbed film, and 2 manga translations. So instead of doing a comparison of just the manga and the anime, I've decided to showcase this battle of the strangers. Our first battle will be sub versus dub. The second will be our 2 manga translations, taking us to our final battle that will be the anime versus the manga. Sound good, class? Let's get into it. Battle number 1, sub versus dub. I will preface this section by saying that I do typically prefer English sub over dub, but that's just me. I believe that everyone is entitled to their own anime viewing experience because at the end of the day, it's your own eyes, your own ears, and most importantly, your own doggone business. Period. Now, clearly I do watch dub from time to time, and I don't write it off because we wouldn't be here having this conversation otherwise. I have to say that from the jump, I was honestly shocked by the announcement of a dub to begin with. Even though this isn't the first time a BL has been dubbed, insert Hitorijime My Hero and Love Stage, I have but one simple brain cell, class, and the only hope of it at the time was that someone would pick up this film for at least an English subtitled version. Being the last film out of what I like to call the Blue Links Big 3 yet to have an official English subtitle version, I was honestly starting to lose hope of ever being able to see the one shot I love so much on the big screen. But I am beyond thankful that the powers that be had other plans. When they first announced the Japanese cast, I was already shaking the table. Well known for his long-running roles as Yukihira Soma in Food Wars and Kirito in Sword Art Online, Mio's character was voiced by Matsuoko Yoshitsugu. On the other hand, we have Murata Taishi, who voiced Shun, and he was also in the cast of Food Wars as Ibusaki, and he voiced Akinori in Haikyuu. Overall, hearing the entire cast of characters come to life was a wonderful experience, and I couldn't have asked for more. But let's talk about the dub, shall we, class? When Funimation had announced that they were going to be streaming both the sub and the dub of the film, they released the cast list. When I was scrolling through and I realized that Mio's character would be sharing the same English VA as Izuku Midoriya from My Hero Academia, I had to see it. I had to see it! I remember when it came out and I told my sister that I was going to watch it, and she plainly put it that curiosity kills the cat. But y'all, I had to know. I've actually watched the English dub for Stars Align after watching the sub version, which has both Josh Grell and Justin Briner as Toma and Maki, and I remember liking how they did their characters, so I felt like I was going to be in good hands going into the film. An issue that I've commonly had with dub is that the English script will sometimes dramatically deviate from the original content's message, but I didn't have that with Stranger by the Beach. I felt like the English cast did a great job of evoking the same, if not very similar, emotions to the ones that I had when I first watched the film, and to put it simply, I enjoyed both. Yes, you heard me correctly, class, both. I am not exaggerating when I say it is extremely rare for me to finish a dub and say that I enjoyed it just as much or even remotely close to the way that I enjoyed the sub. I do think there were times where the English script made some of the lines lines for certain scenes a bit more direct than the nuanced way I felt when they were presented in the sub translation, but I don't think that element took away from the story's overall message. There was one particular line change in the English script that I really liked. Eri and Shun are sitting outside after dinner and he says,
"I was just wondering what makes us all so afraid of two men or two women being together. All the things we could fear in this world, and we pick love."
That was a good one right there. So now that I've watched both more times than I'm willing to admit, comparing the translated English subtitles to the English dub script, the majority was pretty much line for line, bar for bar. So I really like that when I put on the dub version, it didn't feel like I was hearing a completely different story. So at least in my personal opinion, even though I'm an anime watcher with a preference for sub, I still think that both versions were cast exceptionally well, and I for one love to see it. Stranger by the Beach versus Seaside Stranger. Now if you've been in the class long enough, you know that I prefer physical to digital, but there are times when the digital version is all that you have. And in those cases, we say thank you for the food and we eat it. And I am so thankful because I wouldn't have came across the series otherwise. The scream that left my body when I saw the announcement that Seven Seas would be producing English prints for the entire series, demonic. And y'all, when I saw the little delivery notification, it felt like my birthday. Despite there being a rating of TV 14 and older teen 17+ for the film and English print respectively, I would still suggest looking into content ratings and trigger warnings before starting this series. The volume has a smooth matte cover with glossy lettering, and it comes in the smaller standard 7 Seas manga size if you've bought from them before. In contrast, here I have the original Japanese print. The dust jacket it comes with has the same cover, and on the inside the manga itself has a very simplistic design. I recognize the attention to detail that this English print by 7 Seas had for the lettering and design. I did buy the Renta version permanently and I used to reread it a lot, so I did notice the little differences in translation, but it wasn't anything drastic, at least to me. And honestly, I'm not picky about that kind of thing either, especially since I'm just happy to have it in the first place. All in all, yet again, I am thankful for both of these versions and the work of the staffs that made them possible. As we come down to the final battle of the strangers, I wanted to throw out a little spoiler alert warning for the class. I'm going to start getting a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of the story in this final battle. So if this is your cue to navigate away to a virtual shopping cart, or maybe to the play button on Funimation, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you hear today, make sure you hit that like, subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you next time. So let us continue class with our final battle of the strangers, anime versus manga. Here we have the manga, the source, the origin, the provenance, if you will. Without it, where will we be? Drifting in an endless sea of... Okay, I'll stop. All I'm trying to say is that the manga is the reason why we're here in the first place. The one-shot does try to incorporate as many pieces as possible from start to finish because there's only so much anyone can do in 200+ pages, especially done on the premise that it won't continue into something more. The note from Kii Kanna Sensei mentions that this all started out as a short story that led to a one-shot that eventually turned into a series. It's amazing to me that this love story between Mio and Shun started from something so small and grew into what we have now, being the film. Like I said before, I thought that the film was cast wonderfully, and not just Mio and Shun. Shout out to my girls Eri, Suzu, and Auntie because they were in the studio doing their thing. Aside from the cast, I thought that the OST added an extra layer of passion and emotions because y'all know how much I love music, and I've been faithfully playing the film's theme song since September of last year. These are the things we love to see. If the class hasn't realized from the past 2 battles, I'm a very why can't we have both kind of person. But let's go ahead and put these two head to head and get ready to rumble. I was coming into the cinematic experience of watching the film fairly fresh because it had been a while since I had last read the manga, but when I hit play, I really thought that my brain cell had finally bottomed out because it wasn't quite how I remembered the story. I was gonna wait to reread the story once the print version came in, but I was racking my brain so much after watching the film I could not wait for it. So I pulled up my digital Renta copy and lo and behold, I was right. I'm no stranger to seeing changes going from book to screen in any story. And though I'm sure there are those who will disagree, but after going back and reading the manga, I didn't see the changes in the film as a detriment to the overall story. Yes, you're going to notice the parts that are missing or changed as a reader prior to seeing the film, but for the medium that is used to convey this story, I don't consider the film's adaptation to be far off the mark that is the manga. On that note, let's talk about the changes. Once we get to the time skip, the post-reunion of Mio and Shun in the manga, these two characters were way more lovey-dovey than they were presented in the film. Shun's character in the film was very snippy, and that really kept Mio at bay, like literally. In addition to that, the film made it seem like Mio didn't contact Shun at all. Now, the congratulations postcard that Mio sends Shun in the story is still in the film, but we don't even see that it's from Mio. So while I'm sitting here screaming and pointing at my screen, it's more of a breadcrumb for the people who have already read the story rather than the people who are coming in for the first time. Shun was understandably pressed about Mio not contacting him outside of that one postcard and keeping his promises in general, but he was more outspoken about this in the manga in comparison to the film, because in the film he was really just okay, like I digested this creative decision in the film as a way to emphasize on the distance between Mio and Shun, which added to the tension and emotions growing between these two characters that makes them bridging the gap all the more lovely. But another element of the film that stuck out to me was the way that it leaned into flashbacks. And not just the ones from the manga, they threw some new ones in there too. More specifically speaking to Mio's mom, Miss Ma'am was still in my heart with every scene. I'm actually really glad for them going into Mio's memories more in general, because it really brought out how much his character values family. And on the topic of Mio's flashbacks, there's one where he's making a delivery to the owner of Mimi's bar, and he briefly tells them about his situation with Shun and a roundabout way of seeking advice. I'm guessing that this scene was in place of the one in the manga where Mio initially tried to call Shun from the mainland but got Eri instead, because in a way both of these scenes are addressing Mio having that moment to think about what the relationship he shares with Shun means to him. These were just some of the changes that I noticed when I initially watched the film. And of course, after reading, I noticed others. Like when Sakurako slapped Shun in the film, she was actually supposed to pick up that watermelon knife and start waving it around. So whether someone has read the manga before or even after watching the film, these elements are going to stand out by comparison regardless. But that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing to me. Now, it goes without saying that there's only so much that can be done and kept with under an hour to work with. So at least for me, I'm glad that I was able to still see Kii Kanna Sensei's distinct art style as well as their story still shine throughout the film. The way that I see it is that the film's adaptation takes a more subtle and nuanced approach to the story, whereas the manga, being the original source, has the opportunity to spell it out. And as a watcher and reader of this story, I felt like they were both the appropriate choice for each of them. There are plenty of stories out there that have changes going from page to screen and vice versa. Don't forget about manga and novels that are adapted from films and shows. Therefore, more often than not, you can't please everybody. So yes, this video is a roundabout way of me just saying that I love it all. But honestly, I am just so happy that I've finally seen the day that I'd be able to talk about both the manga and the film together. So I can't complain, because we could have nothing at all. Under the title Stranger by the Shore, the English sub and dub of the film is available to stream on Funimation with their membership. You can find where to buy your print and or digital copy of the official English translation of Kii Kanna Sensei, Seaside, Stranger, Umibe no Étranger through 7 Seas Entertainment. Once again, despite there being a rating of TV-14 and older teen 17+ to the film and English print respectively, I would still suggest looking into any content trigger warnings before starting this series. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you heard today, make sure you hit that like, subscribe before you leave. But that's all I have for today, so bye!